as written.
I'll second.
Moved by Trustee Merrill, seconded by Trustee Soto. Any other discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you.
All right, we'll move on to reports to the board. Staff Senate President, Ron Priest.
Thank you, trustees. Just a few things to mention to you. We had our ice cream social that we have every year during the week of spring break. We would raise a few more funds for our scholarship, as well as have a great networking opportunity, and had really good attendance this year. So appreciate everyone that supported that. Actually, that was last Thursday. We are looking forward to a brown bag luncheon that we've invited Dr. Schaefer and Tammy Mays from HR to participate in, just to actually have any questions that might be need to be answered by our leadership that are of interest to staff, and we'll also be sending out a survey so people can respond that way. And I'll also let our speakers know ahead of time really what to expect. Maybe some questions around compensation classification, and I expect just some clarification that needs to be made. And I think that'll be a great opportunity to have Dr. Schaefer and Tammy Mays in the room at the same time. Looking forward to that on the 24th of April. And then, as I mentioned before, we'll be looking forward to our staff retreat on June the 28th, and a lot of planning is going into that. And Dr. Schaefer has it on his calendar to be available during our lunch that day, and then we'll have activities for the morning and afternoon sessions, and look forward to people participating. And that's all I have, unless you have any questions for me.
What's that date again, Rhonda?
What's that, sir?
What's the date?
The date for the staff retreat is on June the 28th. It's on a Thursday.
Thank you. Any other questions?
That will be here on our campus in the Pathfinder building. Thank you.
Thank you. We do not have a report from Faculty Senate today, so with that said, Dr. Schaefer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Good evening. Thanks for letting me kind of get my thoughts together after a quick turnaround trip to Jackson. I will want to give you just a brief update on the trip there. So I went up yesterday morning to be part of a larger event that is kicking off NDOW sort of final legs. So they had basically 3 reports that were ultimately due as part of the NDOW legislation. And they'll be working on their final report. I believe the date that has to be presented to the governor, I think, is August 1st coming up. That is essentially supposed to set the stage for the 20-year state plan for economic diversification. There was some slight change in updated legislation in this session in terms of what their role is. But this event really was about broadening that group and those individuals by bringing other thought leaders and folks from the state together and participating really in what I think became sort of a 2-day session about really about innovation and understanding the changes that we will face in the state and the world as a result of disruptive innovation, and how we might embrace innovation as a state to help actually diversify our economy. And so we spent the day with a group called Singularity University, which was a group of faculty from an organization, not an actual university, but an organization, and actually went through session after session looking at significant game changers and things that are ultimately going to reshape the world. Some of those about: autonomous vehicles, self-driving cars, vertical takeoff and landing, autonomous pilot vehicles, augmented reality, and the concepts everywhere from insight augmentation all the way to virtual reality, and how that's changing the way we look at the world, changes in energy and development with energy, the exponential change in computing, the impact of additive manufacturing, and more importantly the digital manufacturing. And one of the big things, some of you probably, Trustee Salazar's probably read all these, but actually had a session from one of the guys who worked on the first ever closed loop distributed additive manufacturing into outer space, where they actually 3D printed, digitized, sent a digital image to the space station and printed a 3D ratchet in space. And did that. And so when you think about that, and really what they pushed us on is to think about how distance, location, traditional supply chains, all those things, may very well be changing the way we approach work and the way things happen. So the concept of singularity, as I understand it, is really driven by a book of the two founders of the group that at some point, not in the not too distant future, we will reach what is a singularity. And it's at a time where technology and artificial intelligence will essentially bring all of us together, and we will essentially become what artificial intelligence allows us to develop and augment as a group. It's a fascinating process. Getting from there to economic diversification, I think, is a little bit of a challenge, but being able to think and see some of those major trends and how Wyoming might actually be ahead of the game to work on some of these these changes, it was kind of interesting. So as I was saying, when people walked in, we did have 8 community college students and there were 3 UW students. I know it's not a competition, and I'm not competitive, but our community college students were fantastic from all the colleges that came. We had 2 that came from LCCC, and I tell you what, in fact, one of them was a Wingspan student, Jenna Piper. I absolutely impressed. The governor was impressed, so much so he made 2 decisions. The first was, he said, we're going to do a youth summit and try to engage youth into this conversation in ways we haven't, and he's tasked our students with helping with that. And the second one was he assigned Jeremiah Riemann, who has enough on his plate with Endow, to now tackle that youth summit as well. And so the student engagement piece was absolutely fantastic. And so lots of deep thought, lots of interesting concepts, things that no doubt will impact our thinking here. But it really was 2 days of kind of overwhelming, One of the first exercises they had us do was sign up on this spectrum. The most optimistic people on one side and the most pessimistic people on the other side. And I, I tended to sit on the more optimistic side, but there came a point where I felt myself shifting to the pessimistic side, because you start understanding things when you think about the changes of what technology is doing. I mean, you think about historically, our work and ultimately the way we make livings is really around the inefficiencies of human beings. Yeah. Technology is removing the entirety of that inefficiency. And so you wonder, at a point, do you essentially remove the concept of making money for earning? And then that leads to conversations about guaranteed income programs, and some of that's being discussed in European nations at this point. And you think, if that's the world we're going to, I don't know that I want to be there. So, it was a wonderful thought process. I don't know where it'll go from there, but it was really nice to be part of that. And it was nice to have our students engaged up front and center, thinking about the long-term future of Wyoming.
Mr. Chair, may I add something quickly? This is where the Fine Arts Building belongs.
In the future?
in our future, this kind of discussion, like when you were talking about how do we make the technology happen in today's world, you asked something like that, the bridge. That's where fine arts students belong. You start talking about how the innovations that are happening in our world and bringing young people to be involved with that. That's where the fine arts belong. So actually, when we go into a discussion about the future of the Fine Arts Building, we could very well tap into that very Endow discussion that you're talking about, because those talents of creativity and problem solving and looking to the future and visioning a future, visioning something that doesn't already exist, taking what you have and making and turning it into something that is design-wise intelligent and beautiful at the same time, and attractive for people, and that's where the arts belongs. So I think what you said just now is inspiring me to take the discussion about the Fine Arts Building into yet even a larger direction.
Thank you. We've inspired Trustee Little, so we could adjourn, right?
All right. Before you move on, Dr. Joe, since Jeremiah Riemann is working for the governor, and the governor's going to be going out of office, and Jeremiah is no longer going to be working probably with Endow and for the governor, obviously. This youth conference, is it going to be coming soon? Like maybe in the fall?
Mr. Chairman, Trustee Erickson, I think they were shooting either for the spring or early fall is what they were looking at. And the students are really going to help them set that platform. And they discussed in Laramie or possibly Casper. And that's about the extent. They literally took our students in a room and started planning it. And so I don't have the details, but it's exciting. Yeah. So thank you for being flexible with my schedule. I'm glad that the weather cooperated. I do want to just walk you through a quick legislative update. You have a handout in your materials that kind of walk you through, or should be attached to your agenda, that walk you through just what I identified as the main bills that were impacting the community colleges. And I kind of just put in some notes about how they impact LCCC. So let me, if you've got those pulled up on your iPads. Good.
Yep.
Good.
Oh, they are, okay.
Yeah. I'll just walk you through it. Some of them I think mostly about. House Bill 1, of course, the budget bill. As I've said in the past, we've been very fortunate that the governor's recommendation for state aid to the community college has stuck. And is available there. The budget bill also has the $5 million grant or loan for the WyoTech initiative. House Bill 31, which is I think very helpful for us, actually extends the eligibility to utilize your Hathaway scholarship from 2 years to 4 years. And this is one of the things we think is not only going to help those youth that maybe go on study abroad, or they're doing different AmeriCorps like Vista Volunteer, AmeriCorps volunteer programs, those that go to work and after a few years say, boy, I really need to go to college, gives them 4 years to past graduation to come back. House Bill 109, and I am still trying to understand this. I have some documentation, and Dorothy Moen, the benefits specialist in HR, will give us a more of a descriptor on this. Basically, the easiest way I can do this is a change to the retirement contributions for public employees. Over the next 2 years, it will increase the contributions by 2%. 1% that is intended to be coming out of the employee contributions, 1% from the employer contributions. As you recall, there's a couple things that make these types of things a little bit complicated for us. The first is that when they say the employer or the state will pick up that 1% over the course of the 2 years, what that really means for us is we get about 60% of that funding, and we have to fund the other because they only fund the portion that is derived from whatever the proportion of the state funding for the community colleges is. So as we look to pick that up, we will get 60%, and that means for us to comply with the statute, we will have to take that other 40% out of our general fund budget to make sure we're picking up that piece of it. So that's the first thing that complicates this. The second thing is that while there is a statutorily defined employee share and employer share, when you look at the numbers that come out, it will look like the employee is contributing, I don't have the number right in front of my nose, say 6.5%. In reality, the employer has picked up a significant portion of the employee share, so employees contribute about 1.8% to their retirement. So you've heard me talk about this where there's an employer share, there's the employer share of the employee share, and then there's the employee share. And so based on our current distribution, I'm not sure how all of that will shake out until we actually get to the budget piece of it. But the intent is that this is going to increase the contribution to employees, and that both employees and the state, the employer, will have some skin in the game to help bring that up. So the intent is right. The mechanics are the piece we'll just have to work through. Jess, did I get that close to what you, okay? I always wonder with the retirement bills. House Bill 175 is the Common College Transcript Bill. This is Representative Northrup's bill. We tended to support that. The intent here behind this legislation is really to help get into the areas where legislators feel that perhaps the articulation of courses and programs aren't quite done the way that we wanted them to between the community colleges and the university. And so the way to get at that, the place they wanted to start was actually by looking at having a shared transcript process, so that it was very clear on the student's transcript the courses that come from any college they come from and the university, and really to try to avoid from the course picking strategies when it comes to transfer, so that students who are taking a course at a community college, they don't show up at the university and say, well, yes, we have this program agreement, but we really want you to take this class. That class from Northwest College doesn't make sense. This will be a bigger conversation, because the intent of where I think the legislature wanted to go with this isn't clearly inherent in the legislation, and the steps just getting to even the digitization of a common transcript could lead to significant conversations, such as having one student information system. So right now you have 7 colleges on Colleague, the university on Aleutian Banner. We all have our own instances. If you want to move to a record that demonstrates student academic achievement and it's common across those platforms, it's not a far stretch to say that may be a common enterprise student information system. And so I think there's more to come with that. The first step is really just getting together with the community colleges, the Community College Commission and UW, and sort of looking at what we think we can accomplish and reporting that back to the Joint Education Interim Committee, I believe, in October. House Bill 194 is the state-funded capital construction. I think you know most everything there. But for us, that includes the $7 million for the fine arts. It includes the low-interest loan program for residence halls, and was amended and eventually agreed to expand that to instead of $30 million with very narrow language that really would have made LCCC the only institution eligible, to increasing $60 million and opening it so that all community colleges were essentially eligible to apply. More on that coming. It also authorized our Albany County campus classroom expansion at $1.3 million. It authorized the RAC at its original amount. And then in sort of a last minute change from some of our representatives, it added the Crossroads building in for authorization. As you, I think, heard from Vice President Johnson, that project was always supposed to be around $800,000 or $900,000. And as we experienced with the Albany County campus, when the bids come in, it's looking at $1.2 million. And while we have those funds and those funding sources for that project, it exceeded the threshold for authorization. And so we shared that with some of our legislators, and they said, we don't want you to wait another year to do that, and we don't want you to scale the project back just because it doesn't have legislative authorization. So they folded that in here. So it is authorized at up to $1.2 million. Let's see, Senate File 33 is just a military spouse and resident tuition, so it just extends the tuition benefits. Senate File 36 is the Combat Veterans Tuition Program. You probably remember when we went through cuts, the commission who manages that program recommended actually removing it because it wasn't core to the Wyoming Community College Commission's mission or operations. The governor came in, restored it during the interim. The legislature funded it, but they got a group together to say, let's take a look at this program and see what some of the challenges were that were driving the cost up. They made those changes and came back, and it was approved as Senate File 33 or Senate File 36. Then there's the NDOW bills, just quick. Senate File 108 is economic diversification and development. And the piece in here is actually the language that requires NDOW and other folks to work with the community colleges to identify and prioritize CTE, career and technical education programs that fit with the direction of NDOW's priority sectors. Senate File 118 is Kickstart Wyoming. This is really about state-funded angel funds, if you will, investment capital, venture capital to help entrepreneurs, help students, help others kickstart ideas. And so there's a variety of different types of programs, but community colleges are one of the eligible entities in terms of receiving some of those funds to help with new business starts and entrepreneurial endeavors. And then Senate File 119 is the workforce development bill. This is the bill we were anticipating that essentially provides resources for training that's done in partnership with an authorized training provider, community colleges being one of those, that help businesses add jobs, expand, or relocate to Wyoming, really in these specific these priority economic sectors. And so in all, NDOW did well this legislative session, and honestly, for as much as we rode the roller coaster that all our wonderful senators and representatives did for the session. Community colleges really were treated quite well. And so Senator Nethercott and your colleagues, we appreciate that. So yeah, we really did well. With that, Mr. Chairman, I'll pause there and see if there's any questions specifically on the legislation or legislative update.
No questions?
Okay. Now, Mr. Chairman, just a quick update on the WyoTech status. Since our last meeting and the conversation and your guidance, Dr. Hammond and I and others prepared and submitted a proposal to the Business Council. You saw a final draft of that. I don't believe it changed from what was actually submitted. We did have an opportunity to meet with the CEO and staff at the Business Council last Friday. Thank you, Brady, for calling in on your day off to do that. And walk through the addendum and the proposal. And we made sure we stressed what I believe was the sentiments of the board with intent to this. We want to be a solution. We want to help. We want to ensure that community in the state preserves that programming. So we want to be a proposal that's on the table and at their disposal should it be needed. But we do not want to be perceived as competing with the private sector. And shortly after that meeting, I think some of you saw there was a couple of articles in the Boomerang, and even the language with the reporter was there's two competing proposals, one from a community college. And so we reached out to him and really tried to reinforce that. At this point, the Business Council staff will be coming out to campus tomorrow. Dr. Kozlowski, our Dean of Bats, will give them a tour of our automotive programs. They want to see the programs and how they run. They have received and have entertained a presentation of the private sector proposal as well. And then they will start doing their analysis. The one area that the governor did veto in the budget bill pertaining to this is he vetoed the line that basically said the Business Council had to make a recommendation to him by April 1st. And as you know, that veto wasn't overridden. So they have a little bit more flexibility, but we did share with them that for all the other expectations, the only feasible path for us to secure the state funds is to have an annexation election in the primary, which is August, which means that has to be called by April 28th. Am I close there? Around there, which means his decision really, because they have to give you 10 days to consider, any request from the county. They'll take time for a resolution. You go back, it's not much further than April 1st when you think about what he would have to actually decide. The last piece with WyoTech is I did have some conversation with WyoTech and WyoTech's representatives at their parent company. And they have asked us to essentially present to them a best and final offer for what our requirements would be for ECMC in terms of donations, subleases, and stuff like that. And they want that by tomorrow. So, and honestly, our best and final offer is what you saw in the proposal. So I don't think that changes anything. The one piece that we will put in there, though, is the requirement or the expectation that we would have property rights for the WyoTech logo and its use of WyoTech as a name and a brand. And that's one we hadn't really settled on beforehand. So that's where we're at. Again, I've reiterated that our number one goal is to ensure that WyoTech stays in existence and is a functioning workforce development entity in Laramie. And we want to do what we can to ensure that stays there. We do not need to acquire it and run it. If there's other options, we are not opposed to letting other folks step in and do that, but we just want to make sure that we're a solution on the table should that solution be needed. And folks have been receptive. The governor spoke with me today and said he's very appreciative. Over and over, what I've heard from folks like the governor and from the county, from the legislature is, had we not done the work that we did, that Brady did and Talisha, there would not be $5 million in the legislature. We would not be having these conversations. There would not be a private proposal. The ideas with ECMC. And so what the governor said today, had you not done that, we would have lost that for sure. And so everybody is very appreciative of the work that the college has done to ensure that we do all we can to preserve that programming in Laramie. So happy to answer any questions on that or anything else. And that concludes my report.
Mr. Chairman, Joe, would you tell me again the date that you're doing the presentation? to the business council?
Yeah, we did it last Friday.
Oh, you
Yep.
did it already?
Yep.
Okay, thanks.
They're coming out tomorrow.
Oh, that's it. That was it. They're coming out tomorrow to look around.
Yep, Steph, they wanted to look through our programs and really to get a sense of what does this programming entail, more for their own awareness, to see. They've seen WyoTech, and they want to see sort of what we provide and what we do.
Okay.
I think that's, Clark, is that right? That's tomorrow, I think, at 3. Yeah.
I saw that, and I can't remember it for sure, but the county commissioners in Albany County are not in support. Talk more about that.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, you are correct that the county did pass a second resolution that I'll paraphrase here, essentially said, we would much rather support and prefer a private sector option that does not lead to additional taxation in Laramie or in Albany County. I'm really paraphrasing. I don't know that I would say that they came out and said we don't support LCCC, but what they wanted to make it clear is that if there is an option on the table for it to remain in the private sector, and that option would not require them to request annexation and would not require them to ask the voters to tax themselves, that would be their preference. And from a political perspective, you can understand why they might do that. So I don't know that's an indication that they don't support or approve of what we do in Laramie, but given the options, they would prefer to have one that didn't increase taxes in Albany County.
Mr. Chair, I wonder if Butch has anything to add to that particular statement.
Trustee Erickson, Mr. Chairman, in fact, Joe had talked to me over the phone when, was it first part of this week, a little bit, if I had any from him. And I don't, unfortunately. It was quiet last week that I know of, but I really think from what President Schaefer had indicated to you, Brad, that is the case. Albany County, they seem to operate, the county commissioners, they don't have much of a budget. It's, of all the counties, 23 counties, I think we're second to last in terms of per capita revenue. And I know that one of the commissioners, Hebert Richardson, has always said that we like the fact that we don't have much money, so we can't do anything. We just don't have money, so we don't make decisions or choices or get into situations where we have competing interests. But having said that, I think you're right. I think it's truly a case of, oh, here's a private sector proposal. That sounds easy. We don't have to do a thing. We don't have to sign any more resolutions. We don't have to have the county clerk spend any money, do any research, or put this on the ballot, or ask, God forbid, the county residents to look at a 4 mil levy. But do they speak for that? I don't know. I don't think so. I think you heard the mayor talk very passionately about education and our residents and what they feel about it. And I think that if our proposal was the proposal that makes the most sense for the WyoTech, that there would be a lot of people going to bat for getting this effort together and getting the county commissioner to say, you can't make that decision. It's up to us. Give us the option to tax ourselves, but you don't have. And again, that's I think kind of behind the scenes, but I think that's maybe how it all kind of unraveled.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
You have a question? All right.
We'll keep you apprised as things develop.
Okay, on to work items.
Mr. Chairman, maybe as I look over at my colleagues, because I'm starting to wonder how well I prepped them to let them know that they'd be giving a guided pathways update. You can consider it like a fine wine. These updates will be standing update items on your agenda, and over time they are going to get better and better and better, knowing that there's just been a lot going on. But with that, because the guided pathways work is so significant to the institution, and I know to you as trustees, we'll just have this on either as a standing item or report underneath my president's report, or as a work item, so you're just aware of how the work's unfolding. And it really is getting pretty exciting. And so with that, I don't know, Vice President Harris, hey, who's gonna lead today's update? And
We'll harmonize or something. Chairman Barker and members of the trustees, President Schaefer, we just handed you out some little cards that are going to be part of our next event for Pathways. We've been building this month toward this Taste of Pathways event. It's lunch on the 30th, and you're very much invited if you would like to come. What you will see is various tables set up with food, and the leaders of each of these 9 groups. And they will be looking for conversation with our employees to see who's interested in serving or contributing in any way to the work that they're going to be doing. And so it's kind of exciting. And I just, I've probably said this 1,000 times, but I am still just in awe of where our college is today and in this journey, as opposed to probably 5 or 6 years ago, when it would have been very difficult to find 2 people to step forward and say, I would lead this. And now the first 18 people we asked said, heck yes. And others are saying, but why didn't I get picked? Why didn't I get picked? And it's just, these were the first ones we asked, and they said yes. And they are going gangbusters. So in concert with this meeting, with this day, this whole month we've been building toward this event by spreading out our AEMP group, which Bob is a member, to talk to every employee of the college and make sure that they know what this Pathways thing is and what the opportunities are, and what kind of work it's going to be over the next few years and change at the college. And I'll let Clark talk about his visits, but mine have been delightful, 100% delightful. People are have questions certainly about the workload, but we talk about the fact that nothing changes if you don't go above and beyond and add to what you're doing, that nobody will make change if they just do their jobs. And I'm just not hearing any resistance. I'm just hearing, well, where can we find more information, and can I do a little or a lot, and how can I contribute? So our 18 leaders are really being creative and looking for ways that people can give of their time and their talents in small and big ways. So what else do you have to say?
Yeah, we do have our coach. She is coming next week on Thursday and Friday, and it's Linda Garcia. And she is coming to work with us. She wants to come and listen to us and learn, and she's also going to bring information. We have quite a few small meetings set up with a lot of these must-have co-chairs. They are going to have an opportunity to meet with her. She's going to bring some of the information from other colleges on some of the different specialty areas. She's going to attend our Taste of Pathways. I know we haven't told Joe yet. We have a breakfast meetings planned early in the morning on Friday morning to get it, or Thursday morning, I guess, because you won't be here on Friday morning. So it looks pretty exciting. But I think you are sure welcome to come to the Taste of Pathways if you'd like to. We're looking at it like a Taste of Cheyenne, Taste of Chicago. I've been to a few times. It's pretty cool. So the idea you're going to get fun food, that'll all be done by Sodexo. And so people are pretty excited. As we're talking to people around campus, the individuals, they're pleased to learn more. Some don't have a lot of knowledge, even though we've told them things several times. Others feel like they have a really good handle and they're pretty excited and they can't wait to this, because at that point we haven't picked the team, so to speak, yet. And a lot of that will happen after this event, because people will have an opportunity to volunteer, and then we'll go in and we'll select the teams to work on those. So one team that I interact with quite a bit, the 2 co-chairs are really excited, and it's kind of funny. They've read the book called Sprint. And Sprint, I don't know if you've heard of it or read it. It takes a problem and they come together. You bring people together for 5 days. You have charts around. You turn off your cell phones or put them up, and you just work really hard for 5 days and you solve the problem. And so they're looking at taking their project and breaking it up into several sprints And then that way people could volunteer for a sprint and they don't have this 2-year commitment. They could come in and just be part of one of those. So they've already convinced me that I need to be part of one of those because of some of my background. And I think it's going to be pretty exciting. So things seem to be going really well. So anything else?
And just another comment about the interactions that we've had with these 18 leaders is they are actively participating in decision making and setting their path. And the more Clark and I kind of stand back and say, "What do you think? What do you think?" They step up and they debate actively, and then we come to some sort of decision. And at one point at our last meeting, I said, we don't know where this ends. This is the creative process. And are you okay with a little bit of uncertainty with this? And looked around and kind of got the nod from every single one of them. And that to me is some of the most exciting things I've ever seen in my career. And so I'm really thrilled that we have this opportunity at this college and the support of you all to be doing this work. So it's exciting. So I hope to see you on the 30th.
Yes.
Any questions we can field?
Mr. Chair. I mean, it is really encouraging and stimulating to hear how you're involving everybody and engaging the campus. Because I recall one of your team members, and I don't remember which one it was, said, "Don't forget the process." I know what, quote her quote, "We know what we want to achieve, but we got to look at how we move forward and how it affects the people that are going to carry this plan out in the future." And you're certainly doing that. This taste of pathways, or whatever you're calling it, pathways, is a good example. It's a good illustration of how you're involving all of the people of this campus. Then I have a follow-up question here. I believe that Western Community College, are they doing a Pathways 2, or do they just do one?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Trustee Erickson, Western Wyoming Community College was part of the Pathways 1.0 initiative. Yes.
So they're not doing the 2.
No, correct. Yeah, they'll be done.
So my follow-up question is no longer with me.
Thank you very much. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, it's really exciting to see, and it's been interesting to watch as these folks already have taken ownership, and we keep saying, hold on, we're at the engagement stage now. We're setting the stage. We're making sure we know how we're going to work, how we're going to communicate, how we're going to do those things, and really pulling back. No, we're not putting the teams together yet. We're not starting to do the work. We're really going back. This is Trustee Salazar, the back of our heads. Go slow to go fast. Go slow to go fast. And it's been fun because they really are chomping at the bit to get going on the work. But it's been wonderful to see how broadly the dialogue has taken. And what's interesting is Vice Presidents Hay and Harris and myself, we've become essentially resources and barrier removers, and these people are owning this work. So if you can even stop by, it's a drop in, drop out, and just get an experience of what these co-leads are already doing and how the campus is going to engage around this work. It'll be worth your time, and the food will be great too, of course.
Can I say one thing? I missed one meeting, and I found out I was on the list to go talk to some of the employees, and it was pretty invigorating and really made me think this is a great thing. It's kind of seeing the cultural change in action. And one of the things that the question I was getting consistently was this, and you can look at this question positive and negative, but try and think of positive. Is my job description going to limit me from being involved? And I think that's a positive way to think about. They want to be involved, so they don't want, I'm saying, why let your job description stop you from being involved? That was my response to that. So I think through that whole process, that would be kind of something to let them know that, hey, your job description should not stop you from doing some part of this. And some of them didn't have daily interaction with the students. So like I call it like the back office side. But they still want to say that that's one of the things that they missed. They missed that interaction with the students. So this has made an opportunity for some of those groups who don't always have the interaction with the students to now see how they're a part And they could be the most significant part of that cultural change that you're trying to get to happen.
Yeah. It's exciting.
Yeah, it is.
And really a neat strategy to take, these 18 folks, roughly 18, 23, pair them up, right? There's more because it's the steering committee. Assign them 18 full-time employees, and everybody goes out and gets touched with an informal conversation from your colleagues around the pathways concept. So it really is quite interesting. I believe you all have access to Eagle's Eye. If you don't, let us know. There is a community under Eagle's Eye called Guided Pathways. And as I've been out chatting with the different schools and departments, just setting the stage for this and talking about pathways, I tell folks if there's one document that you can read, and you guys have seen this, but if you want to read one document to prepare for the Taste of Pathways, it's the must-haves document that's out there. So when you look at this and you say program maps, what is that? What does that mean? What does that look like? And that document really sets the stage. If you want access to it, I can have Vicki just email it out to you as well, so you have an updated piece. But if you were going to read one thing about pathways before the 30th, if you can come out here, read through that document again.
Mr. Chair, another thought that comes to my mind about what we're doing here with this pathways. Has there been any consideration or thought as to how we're communicating this effort to the populace of Laramie County? And I think it's important for there to be a flow of information demonstrating that how we're going forward with upgrading the quality of our programs here. So if you haven't given that much thought, I would encourage PR and the folks to maybe give a little attention. I don't see her. There she is. What are you doing hiding over there? So I would encourage that.
Mr. Chairman, Trustee Erickson, at our last meeting, there was a recommendation by our Director of Admissions, Sarah Hannes, that one of the groups we should establish with this would be a communication group that would be able to sort of help identify when we need to communicate. It's a good idea. We will do this. I haven't had a chance to chat with Judy and Clark about that yet and how we would put that together. I'll admit that my thinking at that time was internal communication, but certainly as these things develop and the message becomes something that would be of value, could be clear and really impact the community, making sure we have as much external communication about that as internal is certainly going to make a whole lot of sense. But so we'll certainly work on that.
Yeah, and a follow-up comment is that I see this as also a recruitment tool, demonstrating that this is the place to go.
Yep. Yeah, that's good thought. Well, and the last thing I will say, so you'll get to meet Linda Garcia. She's our coach, so she's the one assigned to be our resource mentor, help us connect with the other wonderful resources that we have access to as part of Pathways 2.0. You'll get to meet her if you come out. She'll be here Thursday and Friday next week. It's their first visit. Then we'll have some homework due after her visit. But in meeting with us, it was really a point of pride where she said we are leaps and bounds ahead of where the other colleges are at already. The video that the co-leads and Josh Stein from PR put together that you probably all have seen, hopefully you've seen that with our folks talking about why Pathways is important. They've sent that off to AACC. The CEO has received it and emailed and said it is fantastic. And so, I mean, we've really set the bar high for what these colleges should be doing, and they just couldn't speak highly enough of the college. So it's really exciting to know. And I think what's great is we're not doing the work; it's the folks here at the college that are doing it. So,
any other questions? All right. So we are. I guess with that said, we'll move on into the enrollment discussion. And last time, during our pre-board meeting, we got to hear some of the work that's going on at the institution. And so I just wanted to make sure to add this to have some more follow-up discussion regarding the enrollment. And with that said, do you have anything to add before we?
No, we just spent, doing what we were hoping not to do. We spent the majority of that meeting talking to you without the opportunity for you to engage in dialogue. But in a short hour, 45 minutes, trying to give you a perspective of the things we're working on, the thinking, how resources are being deployed to do various things associated with enrollment. And so the chairman thought this would be something worth putting on your agenda for tonight, should you want to have follow-up discussion or dialogue, since we didn't have time to do that at your last meeting.
Well, I'm pleased that, Mr. Chair, I'm pleased that you're following through on this. Our evaluation, it was a definite pattern from all of us that we want attention as a board on dealing with the enrollment practices that we have here at the LCCC. And I think we're moving in the right direction. I think we, in our budget, we'll have $15,000 for enrollment initiatives. So whatever we might want to use that money for to advance the overall enrollment efforts, that we have that. I think it's incumbent upon us as a board to see enrollment as a major challenge, and that we give it the necessary attention. And if you recall what I had to say in that evaluation, that I'd like to see us receive not only the institutional effectiveness program reviews that we've been getting, but that we have on a timely basis. I think I proposed in spring and also fall, where we have a report on our overall institutional accomplishments in improving the enrollment at LCCC. And I would encourage us to have that type of reporting. And I would think that in spring and fall would be adequate times.
So Trustee Erickson, we have $15,000 right now to work with in regards to the enrollment.
That's if we prove our budget.
It's like, I guess with that said, where my mind goes, if we approve our budget and we have that money, I would like to hear from, we had our registrar here last time as well. She didn't get a chance to speak, but I would like to know from her, and as well as Vice President Hay, thoughts on how we can spend that money, where it's best fitting. But I also would like to know what you guys are thinking. And Trustee Erickson, I know you have some initial thoughts, I believe, right?
Well, I think I've given them right now. You mean in terms of utilizing the 15,000? I believe that Casper went through some type of enrollment strategy, management strategy effort, but their consultant and the people that they employed to do that, contracted to do that, was substantially more money than 15,000. I mean, you said somewhere in the past, either 55 or 50 or 55,000.
I think even a little north of that.
Even a little more than that.
80,000 is what, yeah.
80,000. Well, so the question that comes up is, what did they accomplish with that investment? And we don't know. I don't know. Do you know? Have they shared any info with us?
I do not know. I haven't had a conversation with Dr. Devine about what they've implemented as a result of that. I don't think, at least this past year, that their enrollment corrected. In fact, they seem to be, still in that downward trend as well. So I'm not sure. Happy to do that. The process they went through was strategic enrollment management planning, very similar to what the University of Wyoming did last year with the Huron Group. I think was their consultant to do that. What we're proposing, or what I believe what our registrar, what Stacy was proposing, is that there are things we know we'll have to get in place to really look and think strategically about how we target enrollment and manage our enrollment, both in terms of new students as well as retention. And instead of jumping into that in depth now with pathways just taking off, instead conducting what's called a SEM, Strategic Enrollment Management Readiness Assessment, that we believe will cost somewhere between $10,000 and $15,000. That helps us prepare and look at the work we need to do to be able to effectively develop that strategic enrollment management plan to guide us. And it's things that you can imagine. You know, do we have access to data? Are programs clear? Do we know demographics, target information, all of that good stuff, so we can have all that in place and ready to go when we actually get into the actual planning piece of it. And so that's likely to be her recommendation for what we do to set the stage, and it fits within that budgetary framework.
Any other thoughts, comments?
Mr. Chairman, along with those, the enrollment, 15,000, the enrollment growth strategy plan or whatever, it also seems like we have a parallel discussion with regards to how the community college commission is set up to fund enrollment, or not set up to fund enrollment, and the lag that exists in getting funds from the legislature to help us with regards to if we do increase enrollment. And that's the piece that I seem to struggle with right now, is if we go forward with an enrollment growth strategy plan, yet we still have an obstacle with our funding piece at the state and community college level. It seems like we can't do one without the other, without addressing that as part of our overall plan. Am I missing something there, President Schaefer?
Mr. Chairman, Trustee Cato, and I love saying these things because I could see the frustration that you get coming from the private sector perspective. My answer is it really depends. Some of this we know now, and some of it we don't. And there's pieces I don't know how they will be impacted with that. So, for example, if we want to grow enrollment and believe that one of the areas that we can grow enrollment is by doing what some of the other colleges have done, which is really focus on dual and concurrent enrollment. So get more high school students who are in the high schools taking courses from us. That will grow enrollment. The problem with that is one, we won't see state funding for that probably for another 2, possibly 4 years, because we'll have the base aid set for 4 years. We won't see tuition revenue from that because we waived the tuition revenue. In fact, it'll actually impact our budget negatively. We'll actually have to budget more for dual enrollment, concurrent enrollment scholarships to do that. It will bring some fee revenue depending on the courses we offer that the district pays for. That will be a slight, but in the end, it's a net increase to enrollment, but a net decrease to our bottom line. And so this is why from a strategic perspective, there are pros and cons of doing that. And that may help us in 4 years, but we won't realize state aid for that probably for 4 years, which is one of the challenges. There might be an opportunity because the commission does a biennial allocation, and because enrollment is still a piece of the 40% variable funding that we get from the commission. If we increase enrollment in dual enrollment like that, other colleges stay flat, we may take some money from them in this biennium and actually receive that. But if we all go up at the same rate or all go down, the money is essentially equalized. So this is why in the private sector, people scratch their head. You have no predictability at your revenue stream. So you don't know. So dual enrollment, maybe in it, something that, well, that'll grow enrollment, but is that the best thing for the institution to do at the time? You know, maybe long-term, and lots of things I think. We could go to a traditional age population and say Wyoming students and try to grow enrollment for those students and really focus on that. You've heard me sort of talk about just the numbers issue we have by focusing just on Albany County and Laramie counties with the availability of those students. If we can recruit students that fill existing capacity in courses or programs where we have room, then and assuming that they're full paying, meaning we're not scholarshiping them, there's at least the tuition revenue that may very well help us. And if they're filling capacity, that's actually net revenue that will improve our bottom line. If we recruit those students and they're either scholarshiped by us or under a waiver program or something, those may actually negatively impact our bottom line because we're scholarshiping them and taking away the one revenue stream we may have. If they enroll in programs that require us to add instructional capacity, we'll have to add a variable expense that expense at times is actually going to be greater than what the tuition's going to generate. So you do that. Honestly, the safest place to go if you really want to try to grow enrollment and help the bottom line is to recruit non-residents that aren't scholarshiped and actually have a tuition stream that actually generates revenue. You know our constraint there. We don't have a place to put them to sleep. And so this is the complexity of the enrollment piece to go through. If you just want to grow enrollment, really one of the things we could do is go out and give more kind of free classes to community enrichment type of folks and really grow that. And as you heard from Dr. Perkins, that's really where we've seen a decrease from our peak is we have fewer non-degree seeking students just taking courses with that. Now, the adult population is possibly one we may want to look at. That requires our pathways work to get done, so our programs can be aligned to occupations, which the adults are going to be more tied to. They may or may not bring a revenue stream with them, but generally those adult students aren't Hathaway qualified, and so they are paying for a portion of it. That may be a target, but our programming really has to be shifted to be more adult friendly. And where we see where it is, or there's those real strong labor market ties, the programs are fully subscribed. So actually adding enrollment there would negatively impact the bottom line because we'd have to add that capacity. So for example, Dr. Harris and I were having this conversation. We could try to increase the number of pre-health science students coming into our program, actually improve the quality or the opportunity for improved quality in our applicant pools. Well, we already know that we can't take but a fraction of those that are already here. So we grow that enrollment and we either have to add capacity for them through new programs or other things, or they come in and they don't get into those programs because we're already at full capacity and we lose them and we lose the revenue stream. So it's just, when you think about the only really guaranteed and stable funding source in this is the local funds, because they are not at all tied to enrollment. They're tied to, property value. And so that's why I can't, in fact, we sit around, if Jane were here, she'd tell you, we're waiting for the commission to model how that state money is going to be divvied up. And it's dependent on what the local valuation did in those other districts, what enrollment happened across that, what funds are available. And so we don't even know if we'll realize any increase or actually have to see a decrease in that as a result of it. And so the complexity of the model does not lend itself towards, we'll grow these students and you'll grow your bottom line and have more resources to do the things you're doing, which requires us to have that very deep and complex conversation about which students, where, for what purpose and what program, and then understand how that impacts the bottom line for or against, and have all those discussions. And that's really what strategic enrollment management planning is. But just getting to that stage to do it is what this readiness assessment is about.
Mr. Chair, I think Butch's question certainly generated a whole list of financial consequences of whichever way we go forward. And I can see myself and maybe the others listening to what you just said on one of the videos, to hear it again, or maybe establish a list as you identify these financial consequences of the various routes that we might be going. And so that we have that in front of us and it's clear to us. That was a really good summary. Thank you.
Because it doesn't make sense to me, really. So I'm glad you guys.
You mean I can understand nonsense?
But what it demonstrates is that while enrollment is a very basic and simple concept, the mechanics behind it are very, very complex and have different impacts. And so that's depending on the direction we go. And that's where, when we get there, we'll have to have that conversation and start running down each of those rabbit holes and say, what were we going to do and why when we look at the students, and as we've been sort of working on this institutional integrity and structure and processes over the last few years, we really have pulled back and really focused on the core of our service area, Laramie and Albany County, to do that. We feel good about what we're doing. And when we get through the pathways work, even better about the, quote unquote product that we provide, the experience, all of that wonderful stuff. But then we really have to have the conversation. So who are we going to target? If we're going to target adults, there are financial strategies, programmatic scheduling strategies, alignment strategies we have to do. If it's a traditional age student, there's very different strategies in what you provide as experience. If it's concurrent enrollment, very different strategies that we have to look at and look at where those students would come from. And then we have to decide which portion do we focus on? Why do we want to do that? And it's just a very complex conversation. So, but we are thinking about this on a daily basis, I can tell you, and our focus has been degree-seeking students predominantly from our community at this point. And the metrics would suggest we're doing pretty good with those new students, returning students, continuing students. We're doing pretty well. We've just lost ground in a lot of those other ones that were driving enrollment up, but they're not the ones that are going to earn credentials from us.
So I have just one question, maybe it's answered somewhere in there, but
Yes, it is.
the motivation for the enrollment, and I'm not trying to make this a leading question, but is the motivation for the enrollment increases to also have a revenue increase, or is it to accomplish some other goal?
Mr. Chairman, Trustee Salazar, I would ask you the same.
Yeah.
From my perspective, the enrollment increase and the reason why we've been somewhat, I know you felt this, you've expressed this, Joe, you're dragging your heels on this enrollment piece, is enrollment for enrollment's sake isn't the outcome. From my perspective, enrollment here is to build Wyoming's workforce, to educate more of our individuals. And if you can't guarantee or at least give a pretty good sense you're going to do that, just increasing enrollment is probably the wrong piece. You can't overlook the fact that there's a financial impact to doing it, and you have to have a healthy bottom line so you can continue to invest. But there are programmatic areas where you subsidize and others where you have to generate revenue. And so you kind of have to have a mix. But from my perspective, I mean, I guess I would turn the question back to you. Why increase enrollment? Why do you want to see enrollment increase in turn? And your direction and answer to that is going to help me more than probably anything I can share with you.
Well, Mr. Chair, you've started that particular discussion right there with the various elements that you discussed. Like when you gave the presentation to the Executive Council of NDOW, both you and Dr. Rose indicated, hey, we don't have the critical mass in the state of Wyoming to increase the attainment goal up to 67%, let alone getting the 60% or whatever the Community College Commission was recommending. And so to do that, we're going to have to spend more of our time toward the adults, because we don't have the population at the younger level, the traditional students. So you've already started, I think, that value, if you will, Trustee Salazar, over and above the financial element and the revenue part.
Well, I would not want to put a label on that it's just adult. I'd rather keep it more general, like an unserved population. Is there some unserved population out there that we're not addressing, rather than saying it's adults or high school students? Where might be this unserved population? And I don't think it's separate from what you offer. It's the build it and they will come kind of thing. Maybe there's some things that can be offered that allow that unserved population to self-select into this. I don't know.
Yeah. Mr. Chair, I want to jump on exactly what Bob's talking about. And when we first started having this enrollment discussion, I was also where Bob was saying, what our mission as a community college is not to just go out there and pull students in, right? That's not our mission. To say, look how many students we can grab off the street and bring in here. And that's not our mission. But what our mission is to have an accessible and successful education program for the residents of Laramie County, an opportunity for people to get an education who perhaps don't want to or can't go to the University of Wyoming, or want a different pathway that's not the University of Wyoming, or need a pathway to even graduate from high school, but to have some alternative pathways to the quality of life that an education provides. And so the only way that I can look at enrollment that makes sense to me is similar to what Bob is saying. Perhaps instead of our goal being enrollment, I try to think of enrollment is an indication that we are achieving other goals. If we have accessibility, if our programs are necessary and successful and attractive to students, if the reputation of Laramie County Community College is that you can come here and your quality of life increases because of your experience at Laramie County Community College, if we are serving our population here at Laramie County with the opportunities to gain access to education, then we are meeting our mission and our enrollment will have increased. But I prefer to see it as enrollment as the evidence that we are doing things right at the beginning end, rather than just have our goal be enrollment for enrollment's sake, which I agree, I think is a waste of our time. So maybe what we need to do is pull back and look at what is it we really care about that enrollment, our enrollment is a measure of, and then look at those things. Like pathways. Do we have successful pathways to education? Do we have a building that is attractive and accessible? Do we have do we have programs that are necessary in the community? You know what I'm saying. I'm reiterating myself now. So I would rather have those sorts of discussions rather than just purely enrollment.
Mr. Chair. From a business perspective, when I look at enrollment, I look at sales. And I look when you have a good product, and we have a very good product here, that it is, in effect, you can deliver that product, you have some successful outcomes, then why wouldn't you want to sell more product? Because you're going to touch and help more people. That anybody that comes through these doors, you know, because of your reputation, that you're going to be able to help and serve that individual. Now that's, I think, just from a private perspective, when we look at business and look at sales, if I can deliver the product, if I got a good product, I've got the background, the network, that's why we go after it. And sales is everything to us. That's what we generate profit. That's how we survive. That's how we know we're moving forward. But I always think of this college as saying, you have a great product, and the more people you touch, the more better outcomes you're going to affect with those people. Now, that's just a general concept, but that was kind of my way of just saying increasing enrollment or increasing sales or revenues or looking at what you can do when everything seems to be growing. Because when you're growing, it seems to have a very positive momentum energy. You know, it looks right, feels right. You get pats on the back. It just seems like that's one of those measurements in life.
Mr. Chairman, I do have some thoughts as I'm listening to everyone talk about this. And I know, Joe, you mentioned that our focus has been on our service area and degree-seeking students. And one of the things that I would offer to you is that to consider with regard to an adult population or an unserved population, if that's the language we want to use, is that there are professionals in the community or paraprofessionals in the community that sometimes can come out to the college, or at least when I was a student out here, this is what happened. They would come out to the college and take a class in the area that they were working in to improve their skills. They weren't necessarily degree seeking. They're already in a profession, but there's a class that's offered out here that that they can take that will improve their skills or their credentials. So I wonder do we still have that kind of availability for people in the community? And are we reaching out to those people?
Mr. Chairman, Trustee Soto, I would say yes, we are doing that predominantly on the non-credit side. Although we have a fair enrollment, in fact, a pretty significant enrollment of folks who audit or take a credit-bearing course for professional advancement. Most of the credit-bearing registrations we see, though, are what I would consider life enrichment. The professional advancement for single courses, we see that significantly on our non-credit side through our School of Outreach and Workforce Development. And that's been one of the areas where we always post, exceptional numbers. And in fact, they've been growing and doing, a wonderful job. It's not non-credit enrollment, so you don't see it hit your credit enrollment report. So I think we're fulfilling that mission, and it's one of the areas we're doing it quite well, but it doesn't show up on your enrollment piece. No. So, Mr. Chairman, some things to keep, Butch's, Trustee Cato's perspective was solid. I was waiting for him to go one more step and say our product's great and we want more people to have it because we're going to be able to do this. And that's what we have to get to, is answering the question, but why? What are we trying to accomplish? We can embrace the end-out perspective. We want a higher proportion of our working-age adults in Wyoming to hold a valuable post-secondary credential that contributes to the state and gives them a meaningful life and a livable wage. But there are other questions, and these are things I grapple with. I don't know the answer. So how big should we be? Can we perpetually grow forever? Is there a quote-unquote carrying capacity for our product line, if you will? Should it always expand? Should we be 10,000 students? 15? 30? And which ones? And those are the things. And that's, again, it's part of that process where we can do these things, but strategically, we need to think about why and where we're going to do that. And you've heard me speak to different groups. My interest is in helping people achieve a valuable post-secondary credential to advance or to secure that livable wage and help grow Wyoming's economy and do that. I do believe we have limitations on doing that just from Wyoming's high school population. That's why we think that their potential to pull non-residents makes sense. I do believe there's programmatic approaches to concurrent and dual enrollment, such as the great stuff we're doing with Laramie High School. We need to expand those types of things. So there are things we keep working on, but there's also stuff that we really will have to hone in and really think, where do we want to focus on, or what do we want to do? And that's where we will eventually get, and we'll see some of those metrics, I think, turn around. But we just have to be ready to understand there are other things that will or won't impact enrollment, and we have to look at some of the broader perspectives, as Trustee Little says. So when we get into strategic enrollment management planning and even doing this readiness assessment, if that's the way we go with your budget approval, you'll start to see how we can engage in these conversations, start to set that direction that I think will be incredibly helpful for all of us. Yeah.
Yeah. Anything else?
It's a great conversation. That's what you need to be thinking about.
Brad's leading us into some good conversations.
All right. Moving forward. So board reports. And so I just, as some of you may know, Joe's contract is a 3-year contract, and that is ending this June. So we are going to begin the negotiations. I've asked Jess and Carol to be a part of this committee as we move through. We haven't done anything yet, but we are going to start that process here shortly. And I imagine we'll report back to you, of course, in executive session next time, or next time we have any sort of updates on that. Any questions on that?
Mr. Chairman, I believe Tara's part of that discussion too, isn't she? Or do you just review it when there's a draft?
I can do it however you prefer.
Okay.
I've done it both ways.
Right. So yeah, we'll meet, chat, we'll work with you as well.
Mr. Chairman, personally, and I'm not part of your committee and having Jess and Carol there and you are great, but I always think when you're talking about contract negotiations, I always think it's wise to have our attorney there. So I would recommend that Tara take part in that discussion.
I guess I've never.
Oh, is that what he
I
said?
didn't-
Okay,
I
that's what he
didn't
said.
think it was
Okay.
there. I thought that
Okay.
was just a part of the process, so.
Sorry, I
Whether you like it or
misunderstood.
not, you're in.
I tried to talk him out of it, but
I'll bring the file.
Mr. Chair, I think in the past, the committee has reviewed the contract and brought up the salient points, and then we took it to our attorney who reviewed it and told us what steps to take next, and then Dr. Schaefer was presented the contract, or maybe he was part of the negotiation.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, I think, in light of where Dr. Schaefer is now in his contract, it may be helpful for me to start the conversation and go through the history of the contract, what it originally was and how it has been amended and changed over time, and walk through those steps, and then leave that next discussion about where you want to go with the terms of that contract, with that historical knowledge of the history of how that contract has changed over time.
That works for me.
It's very nice.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Any questions? Okay.
bless you.
Bless you.
So next up, we have the ACCT deadline. So May 20th is when we need to have reservations by, is that right, Trustee Erickson?
Yes, well, I think, is it listed on the agenda?
Yes.
Yeah,
So May 20th hotel, August 17th is early bird
So where is this
registration.
meeting, please?
this is the ACCT meeting, the annual meeting. This year is in New York.
Oh, that
Legislative.
meeting.
Okay. And what is important for us is to, those of us that are going to attend, we need to advise Jennifer so that she can get us registered for the annual meeting. Now, one of the procedures that ACCT has that the hotel would not take reservations until we're registered for the annual conference. So the May 20th is really the time that we should be looking at advising Jennifer as to whether we're going to attend or not.
So we need to know by May 20th who's going, who wants to go.
And when is it? When is it?
It's October 24 to 28.
Goes through Saturday.
They usually have, I think, some half-day session on Sunday, I believe.
Saturday. Just, this one's just Saturday.
Okay.
It's,
Okay.
24th, 25th, 26th, and then half day
Okay.
Saturday.
So this is an alert. The sooner that we can advise Jennifer of our intention to attend, we should. And definitely no later, and I would say no later than, say, May 15th. So that we're not right up on top of the deadline.
Mr. Chairman, the later the delay, the less likely the trustees would get into the hotel that's specified by the ACCT. So the sooner that decision can be made, the more likely they'll be able to get into that. Otherwise, Jennifer will be looking for other locations for the hotels.
Good point. So let's get on the stick.
So if you know.
Not a broomstick.
Need time to think about it, send that to
To
Jennifer.
Jennifer, okay.
Get that going. Any other questions there? Comments? All right. Trustee Erickson, Trustee Ketchum. Facility and finance and facilities.
Okay, the F&F met last week, and we reviewed the Crossroads renovations. The contract has been awarded to Richardson, and I think you went ahead and signed it. And they started last week, and if you go by the crossroads, you can't get in there now. It's all totally enclosed. The West Residence Hall roof repair, I think, began or is about to begin this week. And let's see, the major time that we spent was on the request of Trustee Little, having Joan Evans from the Education Investment Fund give us a review of what they do here in Wyoming. And that was a very good presentation.
She did a good job.
Yeah, she did a very good job. And what she basically talked about was, and I have a flyer here in front of you. It's called the Wyoming Government Investment Fund. And it looks like this. You should have it in front of you. And just to make a short comment about it, this is an alternative depository for government entities in the state of Wyoming. Many community colleges are involved, local school districts, municipalities, and it's a way of increasing the interest on another avenue of increasing the interest on the monies that we have. And there's two parts of it. It's a short term where you see that there's a yield of 1.28% on a 7-day, not a CD, but in the account for at least 7 days. And then they have a variety of CDs at varying maturation dates, 180 days, 270 days, 365 days that you can see on the right side. Well, the upshot of the whole discussion was that President Joe asked Nola and Rick to come up with some review of what monies we might utilize in this type of a fund. That's not saying that we're going to, at this time, propose removing any funds from various depositories that we now have. I mean, they're still there. This is an alternative for us to look at. And let's see, Brenda was there, and Jess was there, and Carol was there. You might have something you might want to add.
Chair Barker, the one thing that came out at the end is someone asked the question about whether we could get the same interest rate at, say, American National Bank, and that might be true. And then we wouldn't need the $250,000, but we might be able to earn the same interest rate. So I thought that was an interesting point.
But, Mr. Chair, it opens our eyes to an alternative place of putting some of our monies.
I thought it was good.
And currently, we have $75,000 in different CDs that is maturing at different rates. And those dollars could possibly be going to a depository such as this government fund. Anything else?
No.
Okay. And then with that, we also reviewed the current and auxiliary funds through February 28, and also the balance sheets for both of those funds and the procurement and contract report. And with that, I would make a record. Go ahead.
Excuse me, Chair Barker. Bill also said that we had $22,000 that we're using for Zeroscape down the, did you mention that? Down the.
You're mentioning it.
Thank you. Down the main mall to improve it and not have to use quite as much water as we're using now to improve the looks of that mall. Thank you.
Thank you for the addition.
Sure.
Any other information? Well, then I make the motion that we accept the financials and the procurement and purchasing report.
I'll second that. It's been moved by Trustee Erickson, seconded by Trustee Ketchum. Any more discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right. Trustee Cagle.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was just reading about Singularity University. Is in Silicon Valley, a think tank that offers educational programs and a business incubator. And it says it focuses on scientific programs and exponential technologies.
We're way out.
Food for
there.
thought, yeah, I guess.
Okay.
I don't know.
We're thinking exponentially now.
That's heavy. Dr. Hammond was kind enough to give me a couple items that the ACC campus is working on. Still a lot of discussion going on with the Albany County District, the school district there regarding the culinary science program. So that hopefully will be a program that can be put in place within the near future, maybe. Let's hope. Okay. He's giving me crossing his fingers. And it sounds like they're doing a survey right now on fermentation science, and they've gone out to over 450 businesses in Wyoming, Montana, and the surrounding region to try and get some feedback on the interest and what the program might look like with input from other people around the region. So that's pretty interesting to follow up on that. And he continues to work on, he said, work with the university on other maybe 2-year tech, 4-year tech programs, one of which would be that fermentation science. But so there's some room there that hopefully Albany County campus can work on with the Albany County School District for sure. So, and any more details, Dr. Hammond, or anything you want to add? Well, before I forget, I would like to acknowledge his work again, as Dr. Schaefer has on the Wild Tech project. He took the lead, and he has been working on that project a lot. And so that's a major commitment of his time and energy. So thank you again. So, but if you have any more details that you want to.
And the one thing I will always add is it's very much a team effort. As Dr. Schaefer mentioned, Felicia played an absolute crucial part with many of the financials, and the team and community over there has been so helpful putting it together. So again, the thanks is really to everyone. Really great effort, yourself included.
Yeah.
In terms of the other stuff, again, just really reaching out to the community, working with ACSD. They have a culinary facility there, looking at what we're doing here with, I know, some partnerships coming together, how we can implement that over the hill as well. The fermentation science, UW, and some interactions. I've heard that we were working on this. It became very interested in, again, very preliminary, but future down the road collaborations where we would do a 2-year, they would take the remainder of it. That could result in sharing facilities that we had previously been told, no way. So again, there are possibilities that are potentially coming together, and hopefully as they move, we will have more to report. And if there are any questions, Mr. Chair, trustees, I'd be happy to answer them.
Questions?
Mr. Chairman, I don't have a question, but I want to add to what Trustee Cagle said. I've been very impressed, Dr. Hammond, with you and Dr. Schaefer and all the work that you have done on the Biotech project. And regardless of how that all turns out, clearly it's making us look good. So
because we are.
Well, but I mean, if we have the governor being so supportive and all the legislators being so supportive and the community in Laramie being so supportive of LCCC, that is definitely a positive thing. So I know it's been a lot of work, but it's very appreciated.
Thank you.
All right, thanks. All right, now to our student trustee.
So in the student world, we've got 2 upcoming forums. One of the upcoming forums will be a student forum for other student organizations hosted by the student government, 2 of our committees. We're going to do that one mostly to increase communication with other groups and to get them clued in on our PR and the great help they can be. The other student forum coming up will be, or forum coming up, will be our forum with our President Schaefer here, the annual one. But we're looking forward to that one greatly. Another blood drive is in discussion. We thought we couldn't do it, but then after talking with our friends over at United Blood Services, they found a date that might work better, and it looks like it's coming together. We may be hosting that one in the SVA lounge, as our usual place will be taken up for the date. So it looks like it'll still have good visibility for all the walk-bys, which typically comprise the donations. The pantry, with the current Crossroads renovation, it is a bit inhibited, but the pantry is still up and running for students. It's just a little less convenient, but it's running. The SFAC process has started, and we have already received our first round of presentations. And it's looking to be another fun year of allocating money. Other than that, I believe there is nothing to report on. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, what's SVAC?
SFAC is the Student Fee Allocations Committee.
Oh, yeah. Okay, thanks. Thanks.
Mr. Chairman, if I can put Derek on the spot. So the open forum with the campus administration, so this will be the third year that we've done that, where essentially the administration, we all come and we sit, and our job is to listen, not to ask questions, not to answer, not to defend, not to do anything, but to listen to the students. And so student government has worked with Phi Theta Kappa and has done that in the past. And we have Josh is going to be the moderator again.
As usual.
Perfect. Great. So one of the advisors to student government and communication faculty will do that. You are welcome to come that day as well. The only thing I would ask, if I may be so bold to say to my bosses, the same rules apply to you. You can come and listen and see and just be there. But it is what we've committed to. It's an opportunity for students to share their perspectives, their voice, their recommendation, and their thoughts. And all we will do is listen and receive it. And then go back. Oftentimes student government will then summarize in some type of memo to me. These are the primary things that we'd like you to let us know how you might work on, or if there's things to congratulate us on. So do you have the date in front of you? Neither do I.
Don't believe I have the date in front of me at
April
the moment. I believe
10th.
I believe April 10th was the date for that one, and March 24th would be the date for our student forum.
Chair Barker, I've been to it and I loved it. And I took a notebook like everybody else in the room who weren't supposed to say a word, which we didn't. And I think I filled 3 pages of recommendations. And one of the biggest ones that came out of that, I thought, was the vets were very strong in their force and kept saying, we need a space on this college campus. And now they have it in the new commons space. So we are listening. So I think it's a great idea.
Is there a time, Mr. Chair, is there a time on that date, April 10th, at what time?
11:30 to 1. Is that what we have, I believe?
Yes, I believe so.
Yeah. Well, I'll ask Vicki to send out a note for when that
that'd
is.
be great. That'd be great.
Thanks, Derek.
Thanks, Derek.
You're welcome.
Okay, so some new business here. One of the things I've talked with everybody, and there's been a couple of you that would like to add in another meeting and a month. I'm going to propose a compromise and see what you guys think about maybe quarterly retreats, something exact same thing pretty much that we did in January, and maybe not even quarterly, but something more frequently than our twice a year meetings. And this would just be a 4-hour blast of whatever we want. And if that's okay with you guys, we can get that scheduled. If you guys don't like that idea, I'd like to hear it too. Any opposed to that? I'll work with Dr. Schaefer to get these things scheduled and work with you guys as well to see what you want on the agenda for those days. Because my goal is to make those as productive as possible and get any information out that we need or would like to see. So Any other thoughts on that?
Could I just suggest that it would be as needed?
Yes.
Sometimes there's not. There's busy times where we know there's gonna, like YOTech definitely would have been a good time to have a quarterly one.
Mhm.
This one going forward doesn't seem to be at this minute something other than what we're doing. But
Yeah.
I just think as the need arises, then
And I think definitely is we would probably set a date, and then I would come to you, we would come to you and say, what do you guys want? If we can't fill the time, perfectly as needed. With that said, what I was thinking along those lines as well in the past, we've talked about this a little bit before, is we've met with groups on campus, students, faculty, and staff as well at different times. What I was thinking about with these quarterly meetings is maybe, our most recent retreat was at noon or something, at 1 o'clock on Friday. And my thought was maybe to have a little open forum prior to the meeting. So from 12 to 1, we have a little come hang out with the trustees. We actually hold the board retreat down in the Pathfinder.
That's a good idea.
And just have people come,
It's a good idea,
something
Brad.
to that effect. So,
I
like
like it.
that. Yeah.
so good with that.
Yep.
So we'll work with Joe to get those scheduled as well. Okay, so the next thing that I wanted to talk about was the calendar items and whatnot. I know I generally don't keep these handy, and there's a lot of stuff on here that you can see, and these kind of get lost in the mix, at least with me. And I track pretty much everything electronically. If it's not on my phone, it's not in my life, is kind of how I feel about it. And which I know some of you are old school trustees.
That was a great school, though. Look what do I want? What's the word I'm trying to think of? Matriculated.
Yeah. Well, I'm asking.
Think about that one.
Calendar on the flip phone.
All right.
Hey, he
All right,
watched
there
that
it is.
announcement on Facebook today.
Oh,
so-
come on. What's wrong with this? It works.
That's what he said. He watched the gubernatorial candidate announcement on Facebook today.
Wow.
Yeah, but that was on my PC, my computer. I don't have a mobile.
Is it Sam Giliotis?
Okay.
Nonetheless, we do have a lot of events coming up.
It's amazing how you can impress a person if you say something.
Well,
We do have a lot of events coming up, and especially this time of year with the graduations, the pinnings, and whatnot. And I know several of you have expressed that it's important that we have some sort of presence as much as we can there. And if we can maybe get to a point where we maybe sign up and or at least show who's going to be there and something to that effect, just so we do have a presence as whatever's going on campus. But I would like to ask you guys for electronic invitations to these as well. And especially with these upcoming pinnings and graduations, if we can fill in where we can. I know all of us can't be at everything, but we can somehow get together and say, hey, this is what I'm going to be at, this is what I'm not going to be at, and so forth. So,
Mr. Chairman, may I ask Vicki or Joe about the opportunity for us to have a electronic calendar that we can check in on? Is there, like with Google Calendars, we can share a Google Calendar where we could all accept invitations or reject them.
that's what I was thinking, yeah.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Trustee Soto, I think Vicki and I can do whatever your preference is. We would prefer if it was one preference versus a bunch of different ones. And I would ask you to think about if it's in email invitations that you can put on your calendars versus a centralized shared, say, Google Calendar. Do you want all of these, or do you want the ones that are just the events? Because you have kind of some of these are for your information. Some of them are really important events. Some of them are nice to have trustees attended at. So we need some thought given to which ones you would want to do. If you'd rather just have a shared calendar, a Google Calendar, that's actually pretty effective. I think we might even be able to publish the Outlook calendar to a Google Calendar. So if that's what you want, we just kind of need to know what your preference would be for format.
Well, Chair Barker, I have a preference, and I want to be notified of any event on this campus where students are going to notice that we are there or aren't there. Those are the most important events to me, like graduation, pinnings, ceremonies like that, where they see whether we're present or not. And it's important to them and to their families, I believe.
Mr. Chair, I think you're also asking us to review the various places we should be and make sure that we do have representation rather than just hit or miss.
Mr. Chairman, which is why I think a Google calendar would be great, because we would be able to say whether we are accepting those invitations or not. We would know who is planning to be there.
Yes.
Well, Mr. Chair, since I'm the person that seems to be the old school here, I may not be educable, but I am trainable. So if someone would train me as to how to use the, whatever you called it, Google Calendar. Okay.
So it can go on his laptop or.
Right.
It's not going to go on your flip phone. I pretty much guarantee you that.
Yeah, no, that's. I've had that for 10 years.
Interesting tidbit, but the iPhone was first released 10 years ago, actually just a little bit more in 2007. So it's been 10 years since smartphone technology has been available.
Missy? What do you think of the dog?
Well, Tara, do you have some time to train me?
I do.
Okay, I'll accept it.
Oh,
So I do think-
opportunities.
You're grateful and then try another dog.
That's right.
So Mr. Chairman, we'll try a Google Calendar. Vicki and I'll sit down and look and do that. Make sure we can share it. You will all need to have a Google account to do that.
How do you do that?
Sarah,
You can master
you got
this.
that right.
Bob is
She said she could take care of it.
Trustee Salazar is like a master Googler and Google
We
reviewer.
did that document.
I love that. I absolutely.
We all worked in a document at the same time, which is one of the nice features.
Thank you, Bob.
Yep. So Trustee Salazar, I can certainly help you with that.
No, I've got my trainer right here.
Even better.
And I'm sure she's going to give me an A.
Awesome.
Okay.
I'll give you a rubric soon enough.
Thank you guys for doing that, and I think this will be helpful for all of us going forward. So thank you. I have asked Joe and to kind of start a more of an internal campaign, if you will, as far as just know your trustee. And it's just something to get us out and within the college a little bit more. Whether it's a simple video, I'm going to leave it in their hands and what they think would be the best. But, just who are you? What do you do? And things like that. So, and if you guys don't want to be a part of that, that's fine too. But I hope that you guys will join me and just getting our face out there within the institution. And yeah.
Okay.
So something to think about there. And then lastly, I'm going to hand it over to Trustee Merrill.
I was sitting in the A&B Pathfinder room a couple of weeks ago, and I looked around at that beautiful new space and knew that it's full most of the time. It has this really tall ceiling, it has beautiful walls, it has great sound system. And I started thinking, as many of you might as well, why don't we pop the roof on the CCI 129 and 130. And I mentioned it to Dr. Schaefer, and he said if I brought it up at the meeting, that he might remand it to Rick Johnson to investigate. And I think we could rent it. I know it's one more project. I don't know how much it would cost. I don't know if the walls are strong. I don't know anything. But I know that it would be another amazing space that we could rent here at the college. And it would be much more efficient than the one we have.
I think the roof, Mr. Chair,
Raise the roof.
I think
Renovate
they
our-
lowered it for the sound. I think it was taller at one time. But
Maybe
they
it's
lowered
still
it.
there.
I think it's a drop ceiling.
Maybe it really is 15 feet tall.
And I think they dropped it based upon the sound.
Mhm.
Could be.
It's a good point.
But when I went to school here, it was tall.
When I went to school here, it was short. So I guess it's worth investigating.
Perspective.
And there are other ways to handle any sound problems than lowering the roof. I mean, you
No,
can look
yeah,
at
'cause I think
angles
this
and
is what this is,
materials
too.
and all that kind of stuff. That, as we in fine arts know, we have to think about sound all the time.
Well, the
Just
sound in the A and B in that Pathfinder room is really good, and they've designed it in such a way that I think it really works and is a very rentable space. And so I think I would like to see at least an investigation if that's possible.
Mr. Chairman, I'm just going to comment on the sound. I recently attended the movie, the Not Your Negro movie that I can't remember. Somebody must have rented. I don't know who sponsored it. But it was part of the history department, I think.
Okay.
The African-American movie event that
Birth
they
of a
had.
Nation?
Pardon?
Was it Birth of a
They
Nation?
had Birth of a Nation, but the night I was there, they showed 2 shorts and I Am Not Your Negro. And the sound was not great.
In the Pathfinder bill?
No, in the
CCI.
Well, it's terrible. It's absolutely terrible. We put in $25,000 worth of sound system and it did not work.
I thought you were saying that the sound system worked.
No.
Okay,
it
I
does
misunderstood.
not
She was referencing A and B, but.
A and B is.
Okay, I'm sorry, I
That's what
misunderstood.
saying. No, it's not good and it hasn't been good, and I would really appreciate it if we could investigate. Just a thought.
Any opposed to?
No, I think it's a good idea.
Okay.
I think it's a good idea.
One thing that I forgot to mention, Lisa Trimble has asked us, she needs a group shot of us before next meeting, ideally.
If possible, we'd like to take a group picture.
Tonight?
I don't have a photographer with me tonight, so, but we'd like to have a group picture. We'd like to feature the trustees in our next Talon magazine. And so, if possible, we'd like to get a group picture of you prior to the dinner, on April 11th.
But if we're in
So
Miami.
We'll dress for it.
That is in Miami, isn't
That's tentatively, we have not scheduled.
You're going with us?
Yeah, but I was gonna have Mike take the picture. So, why don't I touch base with Dr. Schaefer and we'll determine what's the best time to do that then.
Well, you have 2 events, right? We have the employee lunch tomorrow, giving lunch tomorrow. Is that tomorrow?
Employee giving lunch tomorrow with.
So, and I don't know, you're planning, or I don't know if they can all make it at some point. We can see. I don't know if you can all make it to the Taste of Pathways next Friday.
Mhm.
That would be an option if that somehow would be
Maybe it does.
coordinated. Otherwise, it's April 11th and
We'll
possibly
figure out how to
later.
do that.
Not tomorrow.
I know where to find a good camera right now.
Yeah. How about just our cell phone?
I think we'd like to have a higher professional
Flip phone.
We have a professional photographer, so I think we
I
should
think
just.
we'd like to utilize lighting and aesthetics to make that a very nice picture of the group.
Like the
So-
pictures we have of ourselves out on the wall that makes us look young, attractive.
Just take a picture of the pictures.
Are you okay, Vicky?
Take a picture of the picture.
Pretty good timing.
Yeah, I know. Sorry.
I'd be happy to work with Vicki and Dr. Schaefer to get a message out and determine when we can do that. So thank you for your consideration.
Thanks, Lisa.
So, Mr. Chair, we have an April 11 meeting that's going to be in Laramie.
Tentatively right now. Okay. Okay, so the next meeting coming up, there is a Academic Affairs and Student Services Ad Hoc Committee meeting this Friday, and that is at noon. It's here. So we'll be talking about the enrollment software and destination programs. So if you would like to join us, it's here at noon on Friday. Any questions about that? Trustee Little is the chair of that ad hoc committee.
Please let me know so I can adjust dinner count or lunch
yes.
count, which I have done for trustee events.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, would you like us to send a student representative to this?
I would love it.
Okay, I'll see about getting someone queued up for it.
I'd love it. Both of these subjects have to do with students directly, so that would be great.
All right, thanks.
At a lunch, Vicki.
So our next board meeting is April 11th, and like I said, tentatively in Laramie. Any questions on the upcoming events?
Mr. Chair, Don, isn't our F&F meeting also on the 11th?
No, it would be, yes, yes, it is. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't see any conflict. That's in the morning, 11 o'clock.
Mr. Chair, what time would that meeting be? And then, do we know? I
I believe
mean,
it's
7.
6-ish.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, in the past, we have tried to coordinate dinner with the ACC Advisory Board. And so we've started that anywhere between 5:30 and 6. Remember on one occasion where we actually started it, I think even one of the first times I was here, maybe 6:30. And so your actual formal meeting was an abbreviated formal meeting that started a little bit later. And so I think we can accommodate your schedule. We just have to make sure we notice it accordingly and put it on the agenda accordingly.
Mr. Chair, in regard to transportation, is there any possibility of going over LCCC van or bus?
Certainly.
Picture and then go over the bus.
That's a good idea. That's a very good idea.
We're the team.
Driving
There
over
you
the
go.
bus is a very good idea.
The A team.
Bus in the picture, but we
Okay,
can do that.
all right.
This is the one meeting per year where Butch and Brady will get to beat us home. So I know they will appreciate it.
Oh, and
If Vicky
Vicki,
drops off on the way, yeah. I'd be happy to get one or two of the minivans to, we'll reserve one or two of those to go over.
it's way better that way.
Right. Any public comment? No? I'll entertain a motion to adjourn, please.
I so move.
I'll second that motion.
Moved by trustee Soto, seconded by trustee Merrill. Any more discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
We got that before nine.
Yeah.
Should I text you?
No, I don't.
Kelly, if you think it's cool,